about to listen to the Dr. Daliah Show. Sassy, stimulating medical talk radio. Any medical advice Dr. Daliah Wax gives on her show should not be substituted for an actual visit to your medical provider. And now, here's Dr. Daliah.
Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877-DOC-DALI, 1-877-DOC-DALI. So this is making headlines, and a lot of people are kind of intrigued by this. So we have been very gratefully blessed with having the technology to have vaccines. And I have gotten the flu vaccine every year since I got the flu. I got the flu in 2001, and I have gotten the flu vaccine every year until this year. And this year, I decided not to do it because I kind of had a reaction last year when I got both the flu and the COVID vaccine at the same time, or the COVID booster, or I think that happened a couple years ago. And I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to hold off, and I'm going to see, what happens naturally. And I this was not a decision I hid from you guys. You have to make your own decision with your medical provider. But for me, I was like, I'm going to give my body a break 1 year without getting the flu vaccine. And thank God I didn't get the flu. But also when things are more protected, I'm in my studio. I'm around some patients when I do their disability exams, but I'm not as much in the public eye as it pertains to patients. So it was a decision that I made for myself. And some of you have been kind of questioning if getting the flu shot is a good idea. Now, I still think it is, because flu kills. Even if it's not the flu virus, it puts you at risk for heart attack, stroke, pneumonia. And so flu-related deaths happen every year, which is why we recommend the flu vaccine. But a recent study is saying, now wait a second, we found that some people were more likely to get sick if they got the flu vaccine. And that starts to make people scratch their head. Now, this study has not been peer-reviewed, but the study comes from the Cleveland Clinic. And it is a preprint. It was published on medrxiv.org, which is not necessarily peer-reviewed yet, but going to be. And what the Cleveland Clinic researchers did is they looked at data from the 2024-2025 flu season. So this year, or this season, researchers found that among 53,400 Cleveland Clinic employees in northern Ohio who got the flu vaccine, there was a 27% increase in flu infections. They compared vaccinated employees to those who didn't get the vaccine. And this was over a 25-week period. And the study found that influenza vaccination of working age adults was associated with a higher risk of flu during this respiratory viral season, suggesting that the vaccine has not been effective in preventing influenza this season. That's what the researchers wrote in the study. Now, you got to take this with a grain of salt. Okay, there are some limitations, obviously, to this study. But if this really is true, why? What's happening? Well, on one end, we've been told early on that this flu shot might be a mismatch, where it might not be as effective. A good, effective flu shot is at about 65% effective at its best. We were told that this might be looking at 18%, 20, maybe less than 20%. So that means it still can provide protection, but it might not be as protective as previous years. And remember, we have to decide what flu shot or what strains we're going to cover for by February before the next flu season. So we already are guessing and working on the flu vaccine for next flu season because we have to figure it out by February. And here we are in April. So it's not like we could wait till we finish Australia and the Southern Hemisphere from finishing their flu shot and then being able to learn from what happened in the Southern Hemisphere to make our shot. So basically, if they say it's a mismatch, it's not that somebody screwed up. It's that they're trying to make their best guess in the February of the flu season before. Now, if this study is saying that there was a 27% higher risk of people getting the flu vaccine, a question I have is, were some of these people obese? We do have studies showing that obese individuals may not get as much immunity or protection than slimmer individuals. So I would like to know more about this 27%. Was the 27% exposed to a lot more. You have 53,000 employees at Cleveland Clinic. Are some administration and are some physicians, nurse practitioners, respiratory techs. So I would like to see a little bit more about who who had the increased risk. But a big question doctors have had and many Americans have had since the COVID vaccine is, do vaccines weaken our immune system? And we have had doctors speak out saying they can. And their theory behind that is your immunity is working so hard to deal with the vaccine artificial immunity that its guard might be down when it comes to something natural coming its way. But there's other theories saying the opposite. If your immune system is getting primed and ready to go for a vaccine, it's already primed and ready to go for other illnesses. So, I'm mixed. I do not want to get the flu or pneumonia or heart attack risk. And so I will be resuming getting flu shots. But I'm very honest with you guys. I didn't get it this last season. And I was kind of concerned about, I wanted to see what I could do from a natural immunity standpoint. Because I personally feel our resistance against COVID was a combination of vaccine and natural immunity. And so the argument keeps coming up. The more we artificially immunize us, are we weakening our natural immunity or not teaching our natural immunity enough? Now, many doctors will answer, but look, we have live vaccines. These live vaccines, I actually like. It's a weakened version of the virus. So you're still getting the virus. It's a weakened version, so it won't hurt you. And it's like homeopathy. It's like it treats fire with fire. So your body can gain an immune system or an immunity. And so, but it's still considered artificial immunity if it's a vaccine, if you didn't get it naturally. And the reason why there is that difference is because let's say you catch a cold or you catch a chill or you're walking around with wet hair and everybody says there's no science behind it. But a lot of us are like, I get sick afterwards. That happens. After that happens, if I walk around with wet hair. But the surroundings and the onset and the circumstances of when you get sick does make a big difference on how you fight that and build immunity. So we have a lot more to read into this and learn about it, but it is one study and it's an interesting one. 1-877 Doc Daliah.
Hi, everyone. If you've been injured in an accident and think you deserve compensation, listen up. We have legal professionals standing by right now to answer your questions for free. They'll tell you if you have a case and how much it's potentially worth. Call 800-710-5100. I'm here with spokesman John Wolf. So, John, tell our listeners who should call right now.
Well, Maria, first off, thank you for having me join you to answer the listeners' questions. Now, as far as who should call in, anyone who's been injured in an accident and think you deserve compensation, give us a call right now and find out how much your case is potentially worth. Call 800-710-5100.
Thanks, John. You heard it, folks. If you think you deserve compensation, call now to find out how much you qualify for. 800-710-5100.
Advertisement sponsored by Legal Help Center. May not be available in all states.
At Hot Shot Secret, we share the science behind common diesel problems and their solutions. For example,
Hot Shot Secret Stiction Eliminator.
Stiction, that sticky friction, undermines the performance of diesel engines. Third-party ASTM testing verifies that Stiction Eliminator removes 2 times as much stiction than any alternative on the retail shelf. Stiction Eliminator is formulated to be left in the engine oil. It works as you drive.
Available at truck stops, Tractor Supply, O'Reilly's Auto Parts, and online at HotShotSecret.com. Hot Shot Secret. Powered by science.
In a study, it was found that 33% of 44 herbal supplements had no trace of the advertised herb. Don't let that happen to you. Hi, this is Dr. Mitch. If you want to ensure quality, please go to TotalWellness.com. Supplements made for physicians only now available to you too. TotalWellness.com, helping you to look good, feel good, and enjoy total wellness.
Show. Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877-DOC-DOLLY, 1-877-DOC-DALI. Big thanks to Talk Media Network for making the show happen. Big thanks to Daniel, our producer, and big thanks to you all for tuning in. We really do appreciate it. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter at Dr. Daliah, Facebook, The Dr. Daliah Show, and on YouTube, click like and subscribe. So one of my listeners has seen these ads by Dr. Drew for these wellness kits, these medical emergency kits, where there's a bunch of antibiotics and other medications in them that you could buy from his website and then have at the house. And is that a good idea or a bad idea? You know, I've actually never met Dr. Drew. I've heard amazing things about him. But when I saw these ads for myself, the first question I had was, how are you able to sell prescriptions online? Because you're purchasing a kit. See, from what I understand, most medical, and I'm sure he's figured that out. He's a physician, so I'm sure he, understands his licensing limitations. But it's actually a prescribed kit. And I don't know if you do have an in-person doctor talking to you and evaluating you, but from what his website says is it's healthcare without propaganda. It's a prescription only. These are prescription only life-saving medications like ivermectin, generic Z-Pak. He has to say that, which means azithromycin, because if he says Z-Pak, then Pfizer's involved. So the generic Z-Pak, because if you say azithromycin, people are like, everybody likes their Z-Pak. So they want a Z-Pak. So he's saying, you get it, it's generic. And every kit has a guidebook for an educational resource for safe use in the face of unforeseen medical emergencies and resource shortages. Each order is specified for one adult patient. You complete an intake form to be completed by yourself or your immediate family member. Each person can order up to 4 of a specific kit, and they are only intended for the person you give it to, or that they're doing this for. Now, these medical conditions that these medications are, so they basically have Augmentin, which is amoxicillin clavulanic acid. We use Augmentin for sinus infections, for throat infections, for pneumonia, for skin infections. There's azithromycin, which is the generic Z-Pak. We use that for, again, throat infections, lung infections, walking pneumonia, STDs, doxycycline. We use that for tick bites. We use that for Lyme disease, skin. Metronidazole or metronidazole for its generic flagyl for bacteria vaginosis, colitis. There's Bactrim, trimethoprim, sulfamethoxazole, which we use Bactrim for UTI, sinus infections, lung infections, staph, MRSA. It has ivermectin that people use for COVID, even though the studies have been kind of mixed. Its studies have been more positive for pre-COVID cytokine storm than once you're hospitalized, but they have ivermectin, fluconazole for yeast infections or antifungals, ondansetron, which is Zofran for nausea. It's pretty comprehensive. Cephalexin, which is Keflex. We use cephalexin for, again, UTIs, skin infections, and other things. Then there's a guidebook. There looks like a virtual consultation. Okay, so it sounds like you are going to be seeing a medical provider. Because I was going to say, I don't know how this is legal without at least a doctor exam. And then you could even get, based on the what you buy, you could get refills, etc. And it's $299. I think if you're a wellness member, you save 15% if you use the Dr. Drew code. So for $300, you are getting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 prescriptions. These prescriptions are generic. If you add up the cost of these prescriptions, it might be still less than $300. So it's an interesting kit, and the reason why it's interesting and why he's doing it is because a lot of people like to have these medications at home. This is kind of what they, what they, I have ETI, or I have, I'm sure a lot of people would also like to have pink eye drops for bacterial conjunctivitis, not viral, and so the idea of I'm a prepper and I want to have something at the house is a very popular one. I mean, how many times did your kids wake up at 3, 4 in the morning saying, Mommy, I can't open my eyes. Daddy, I can't see. And you had to pry their eyes open with warm compresses to get off the crusty gook of their eyes. And you're like, let me start them on eye drops and not have to wait 3 weeks to get in with the doctor. So not that his kit handles that, but I completely understand being a parent and being a doctor, how people want to have something at home. This is where I'm a little concerned. So let's say you have this medical kit is designed not for you to be actively sick and needing all 10 medications, but for you to, when you on your own feel like you need it, and I guess there's this emergency guidebook, so you could do it yourself, you then take the medication. Well, some of us don't tolerate sulfa. Now, I could take Bactrim and sulfa drugs, and then all of a sudden, I developed a reaction to it, and it was a bad one. And so, are you sure you want people having that at the house? Are you sure you want somebody taking fluconazole when they don't understand? And hopefully, this guidebook has it in there that you can't mix that with a lot of medications. You can't mix fluconazole if you are on an SSRI. Somebody had asked for that. I got a phone call. Somebody was having sex with his girlfriend, and his girlfriend had a yeast infection. She got fluconazole for the yeast infection, so he wanted it too. I go, I can't give it to you because you're on a medication that it interacts with and could cause an irregular heart rhythm. So I'm a little bit concerned that some of these medications, there's not a lot of vetting. The ciprofloxacin, it's a fantastic medication. We use it for UTIs. We use it for severe infections and especially drug-resistant infections, but it could weaken your tendons. And I've had people rupture a tendon because they take it, they work out, and then they rupture a tendon. And so I don't prescribe it a lot unless we need to. And I know people say, well, what about also the antibiotic resistance? If people are self-treating, then these drugs are eventually going to be weakened. It's that is a concern as well. But I get it. I like the idea, of having, I like the idea of having, something at the house when you need to. And I like the idea of patients not being so in the dark of their health. Because, patients save their own lives many times. And that's why we teach patients how to give themselves Narcan, how to treat some chest pain. I want you to take your aspirin, take your nitroglycerin, and call 911. So, I want people being empowered and knowledgeable. But I just don't know. There's a lot of people who, let's say, over antibiotics. They go, oh, well, I have a vaginal odor, so it must be BV, bacterial vaginosis. I need another antibiotic. And they're on 12 antibiotics a year. And I'm like, the odor could be changing because you have a new partner, or it could be physiologic, or it could be your pH is off. It doesn't necessarily mean you have a full-blown infection and need antibiotics. So, eventually these people might have illnesses that they can't treat because they've already overdone it with antibiotics. So in order for something like this to be done, I cannot write people in New York a prescription. I was able to do that during COVID when the laws changed and they allowed there to be reciprocity where you could be in another state that you don't practice in. But no, if you live in New York, I can't. So what this company, I guess, has to do is have doctors prescribed in multiple states. I'm licensed in 12 states, but not New York. So that's my guess. My guess is they've gotten themselves licensed in multiple states so that they could write these. So, here's the thing. Having an antibiotic on hand is very advantageous. Having 10 antibiotics on hand, yes, advantageous. But, the big problem we're having in medicine right now, and we're going to be seeing this, sadly, this is going to be the reality in a few years, is many of you will have cancer or something, and your doctor's going to say, why didn't you address this? Because you were treating it at home. 1-877 Dr. Daliah. Dr. Daliah here. Are you tired, burned out, gaining weight, succumbing to the daily pressures of life? Well, how's your dopamine doing? How you feel right now, how you'll feel an hour from now, and how you'll feel next week is completely reliant on your dopamine. Our daily motivation and willingness to push through challenges depends on the intricate chemical process dopamine provides. Christian Kalikas and I created Deploying Dopamine, a book that tells you what dopamine is, when it dysfunctions, and how to successfully deploy it when needed. Find Deploying Dopamine on Amazon today. Check it out.
Lisa Wolf here to tell you about our newest website for old-time radio lovers. It's 100radioshows.com. At this site, there are 5 old-time radio shows waiting for you to download free as our gift to you. And be sure to browse the additional 700 old-time radio shows available to you for 70% off by using the promo code RADIO at checkout. This is a limited-time offer, so log on to 100radioshows.com. That's 100radioshows.com.
All right. We are back on the Dr. Daliah Show. Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877 Dr. Daliah, 1-877 DOCDALI. So this is a first of its kind bill from what I'm hearing. Daily Mail is reporting that Idaho has banned vaccine mandates in schools and businesses under the Idaho Medical Freedom Act. This is huge. So it bars private businesses, schools, and government entities from denied admission or services to a person for not having received a medical intervention, such as a vaccine, procedure, or medication. It makes Idaho the first state in the nation to outlaw vaccine mandates in both public and private sectors. The legislation was signed into law last week by Idaho Governor Brad Little, who is Republican, and is expected, it goes into effect this next school year by July 1. So vaccine exemptions have been skyrocketing since the whole COVID vaccine debacle, and it's something I predicted. Even though I thought the COVID vaccine could save lives, the second I saw the BS they were doing with the mandates, I'm like, you guys are now going to, people are going to be bucking the vaccines left and right because they aren't going to trust them. And can you blame them? There's no trust. People think they were lied to. They were lied to about COVID virus. They were lied to about the origins. They were lied to about it affecting Americans, such as our military during the World Military Games. People don't want to be lied to. And I think vaccines help save lives. And I think public officials really kind of screwed up a lot of our public health progress and initiatives. But I also think it should be choice. Nobody should feel forced. So, I know people are saying, but Dr. Daliah, now we have a measles outbreak. I understand we do get measles outbreaks. And I understand that if people are not vaccinated for measles, they could get it. So they need to make that choice. Do they want to be vaccinated or not? If they don't want to be vaccinated, there can be consequences. Now you would think that would be very, very simple. Consequences in terms of, well, you might get flu, or you might get COVID, or you might get measles, or you might get, but, people always ask, why is the government getting involved? Well, they deputize themselves to get involved because then the argument started to shift, saying, well, look, if you get sick, you're going to make other people sick. Well, for that first argument, people would say, well, if the other people get vaccinated, they don't get sick. Well, then the counter argument to that was, herd immunity. We need to protect these very infantile, like there was a infant that just got measles, and you don't vaccinate infants. They have to be at least 1 year old before they could get their first MMR vaccine. So herd immunity is you immunize everybody, the bigger herd members, so that the little baby ones in the center of the herd don't get sick, because the bigger ones can repel it. But we found out, like with COVID, you didn't have herd immunity, because you could have the vaccine, still turn around and cough on the little, herd member and still get them sick. So I understand about herd immunity, which is why I do support our pediatric vaccine protocol. I just don't support mandates. I think it has to be choice. That's just me. Now, another issue people will say is, well, what about our hospitals and our tax dollars? That was the argument they made with COVID. If you don't get the COVID vaccine, we're not going to treat you in the hospital. Remember, there was a doctor who said, anybody who didn't get a COVID vaccine, I'm not going to let you come into my clinic. Even though he knew gosh darn well that even if you were vaccinated, you could still spread COVID. See, because that was the argument. Well, if you're vaccinated, you won't have the disease or spread it. Actually, no, you could still carry the virus. You could still spread diseases, even if you're not getting sick. It protects you from getting sick. True, if you're not sick, you're spreading less, but it doesn't mean you're 100% sterile. Well, this doctor, all of a sudden, people were looking at this going, Black individuals were being turned away from this doctor's office because many people in the Black or African-American community were very distrustful of the vaccine. So was that doctor trying to not treat Black individuals? You also saw that with restaurants. I had a patient, she had an ankle injury, and she was in Mississippi. And I had asked her if she needed a work note. She said, no, I got fired. And I go, because of your ankle injury? She said, no, because I didn't get the vaccine. So there's no Black nurses there. And I was like, were you kidding me? And it's because many Black individuals or African Americans felt that the studies on the shots did not necessarily represent their population. So how do they know that the side effects that were not expressed did not extend to their population? And they were also concerned about, the previous Tuskegee experiments, et cetera. So there's a lot of distrust. And when you see people go, sorry, you didn't get a vaccine, you don't get to come in, and there's a predominance in one demographic than another, it really started to, it took a turn that it never should have. So Idaho is also one of 3 states that have introduced legislation to ban mRNA vaccines like the COVID vaccine due to reports of severe side effects. If passed, the legislation would ban mRNA COVID vaccines for 10 years. So many people are fearful that this can cause a resurgence of vaccines because, of course, parents will say no, they don't want to give their kids the vaccine. And again, we are in this predicament because it was the straw that broke the camel's back. The COVID vaccine, and I called it, was the straw that broke the camel's back. The second, Biden said, oh, we're not going to, say, show me your papers. We're not going to mandate it. And then they mandated it. And they fired nurses who were on the front lines that obviously survived COVID and gained some sort of natural immunity. They fired those nurses a year or 2 later for not getting the vaccine. Are you kidding me? They fired first responders. They fired our military because they wouldn't get the vaccine. And what really made people suspicious is when these employees begged to just run my blood. You'll see my antibodies. We do that. If you lose your vaccine record and you need to go to college and college wants to see if you've had your MMR, you could run a blood test. If you don't have your vaccine, rather than go through and get more vaccine, you could do a blood test. And if you have the titers, you're fine. So employees are like, run my blood so I could show you the titers. They could have had titers. Some of them were very short lasting, but some could have been longer lasting. No, you either get the vaccine or you're fired. Well, what do you think that did to trust? They're like, is this because you want to, fill the pocketbooks of these pharmaceutical CEOs? I mean, why aren't you using the same logic you're using with other vaccine programs? And I don't get that. So here is Idaho, which, had a state where there was skyrocketing exemptions, parents, telling schools, I want my kid to go to school, but we're not doing vaccines. And so now that you have people, and I predicted the parents are going to say, look, my kid is getting too many vaccines. I love the fact that we have vaccines. I love the fact that we have a polio vaccine and we have a hepatitis vaccine and a pneumonia vaccine and a meningitis vaccine. These things are so life-saving. But parents, a lot of them are at their wits' end. They're like, you kidding me? Another one? Another one? And now you're telling me with the COVID vaccine, we have to do it 3 times a year? They're like, I'm done. And then they say, I'm done with all of them. Well, that's a concern. Now, when I speak to the hesitant, people call them anti-vax parents, but many of them are just hesitant. They say, look, I did vaccinate my kids for some. I didn't want my kid getting polio. The vaccines I researched and I trusted, I gave them. But there are some vaccines I don't want to give my child. So you do have a population that still wants to vaccinate. It's just they are concerned about some of the vaccines out there. So we need to make sure there's not misinformation, but we also have to make sure there is information that they can access and learn from. And that's one thing RFK Jr. promised that he would have. 1-877 Dr. Daliah.
Hi, everyone. If you've been injured in an accident and think you deserve compensation, listen up. We have legal professionals standing by right now. They'll tell you if you have a case and how much it's potentially worth. Call 800-910-7500. That's 800-910-7500. Call now to find out how much your case could be worth.
Advertisement sponsored by Legal Help Center. May not be available in all states.
At Hot Shot Secret, we share the science behind common diesel problems. For example,
Diesel fuel cetane levels.
the cetane rating in diesel fuel is 42 to 45. Most diesel engines operate more efficiently with a cetane rating of 48 to 50. One treatment of Hot Shot Secret Diesel Extreme will raise your cetane 7 points, increase fuel economy, and improve cold starts.
Hot Shot Secret Diesel Extreme is available nationwide at truck stops, fine farm and auto stores, and online at hotshotsecret.com. Hot Shot Secret, powered by science.
Self-reliance. It's not a phrase we hear much in our culture these days. It might conjure up images of pioneers, the West, rifles, strapping men, and strong women. But what does it mean for us in today's world? The New American Magazine has just released its latest collector's edition, Self-Reliance, Foundation of Freedom. In it, the New American authors outline the necessity of self-reliance for a free people, tips for self-reliant living, and the importance of not giving up hope. This unique edition includes articles on the self-sufficiency of the founders, preparing for a worst-case scenario, firearms, financial self-reliance, the importance of community, and many other topics by expert writers. Now, for a limited time, the New American is offering a bundle of 3 collector's editions, Self-Reliance, The Great Reset, and Trump World, for just $19.95. Available at shopjbs.org. Visit shopjbs.org today.
We are back on the Dr. Daliah Show. Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877 Dr. Daliah, 1-877-DOC-DALI. It's interesting when the stock markets went up and down. I think we were all talking about how, when the stock market went down, you all were waiting to buy NVIDIA or some of these other stocks. Now's your chance. And then the stock market went up. So some of you did pretty well. Stock market goes back down. And so Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, AOC, has been now suggesting that this was an insider trading move. And Even though Donald Trump and every one of us was kind of thinking the same thing, going, guys, while the markets are volatile, there's advantages you can take. I think it was obvious to everybody. Insider trading is when you get wind of something days before it's going to happen so that you are able to then take advantage of it. Well, Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez thinks that people should be outed if they did take advantage of this. She said any members of Congress who purchased stocks in the last 48 hours should probably disclose that now. She said, I've been hearing some interesting chatter on the floor. Disclosure deadline is May 15th. We're about to learn a few things. It's time to ban insider trading in Congress. Now, she does not run the Democratic Party. She is not the House Minority Leader. But she is taking on this role. And also, I think it kind of shows how she's not really like thinking the way, the insider trading, everybody, when they saw the stock market, start to drop, they were like, well, maybe we should sell or maybe we should buy. So the insider trading, those are the ones who are like, look, next week something's going to happen. Something's going to go down. I got intel. So I am going to prepare now because the stock market is going to drop, Friday or Monday. And they act beforehand. So the fact that she's saying the last 48 hours, well, that's everybody and their mother. Okay, people wanted to buy stocks cheap. Once it went down, they could buy some stocks. Duh. Oh, then that's just kind of what happens. But it's interesting because people are saying that she is the new face of the Democratic Party. And Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, I am not a fan of at any rate. But I do have to respect her for getting in the public eye. She knows, maybe it's because of her youth, maybe it's because she knows how to work, the socials and YouTube and all that. But she has been able to get a lot of attention because, I'll watch the news and I'm like, who's that? Oh, that's another congressperson. Never heard of him, never saw him. AOC, she's got the letters, it doesn't mean she should be running the Democrats. I don't think I don't think a lot of Democrats want her, because she's more radical. And aligning with Bernie Sanders does not always necessarily mean a good thing. But she's making headlines, and she's making more headlines than the other ones. And that's kind of how politics work. Like Trump. Trump ran for the primary, and I talk about this because I have a marketing background, PR background, psychology, family medicine. So to me, it's all, related. So the psychology of the voter and psychology in general has a lot to do with politics and marketing. And so, here's Trump, who is a non-politician going up against Rand Paul and Marco Rubio and other Republicans, and he's just getting the headlines. And he makes a joke, or he makes a comment, or he makes fun of Rand Paul like he did. Now I think they've made up and they're friends. And then he starts getting more attention. So now all everybody's talking about is Trump, Trump, Trump. And that's what Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has been doing. So she knows how to get on the mic. She knows how to get in front of the camera. When other, Congress people are like, I don't want to talk to you, I'm not going to make a statement. She doesn't care about making a statement. Even if what she says is stupid, she gets on that camera. So if you're a Democrat and you're like, whoa, I don't want it to be her. All right, well, a lot of voters might be falling, for that. Now, I've said, first and foremost, what the Democratic Party needs to do is come up with somebody who's honest and common sense. I really like, oh my gosh, I forget his name. Oh, he's the Tennessee congressman that you see on the 5. Oh my gosh, sorry about that. I got to look this up. Sorry about that. I just want to look up. Harold Eugene Ford Jr. He was a Tennessee congressman, Democrat. I really love hearing him speak. I mean, I might not always agree with everything he says, but wow, logical, common sense. Now, it could be because he's on a right-leaning network, but he backs up what he's saying. And if the Democrats don't want this reputation of being fringe, being all about biological men showering with young girls, all about getting canceled. Like, I think Anderson Cooper got corrected because he was introducing a civil rights attorney, and he said she is listing off the accolades, and she said they, them. And he got corrected, and that freaks people out because the average person doesn't want to do wrong. What I hear from students and from people all the time is, okay, what are we supposed to say so we don't get in trouble? Everybody's worried about getting trouble, you can't live in that fear. And then all of a sudden you have a president going, we can have showers, that actually give, more water pressure. You don't have to shower with a biological male. No, we're going to stop that. There's a breath of fresh air that, okay, we could say that without getting canceled. And so, here's Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez wanting to out anybody who bought stocks or sold stocks during the tumbling and accuse them of insider trading. Well, you see these scare tactics. It's pretty scary stuff. And that's what I think the average Democrat doesn't want or Republican wants. Yeah, now I've seen extremes on both sides. And I have my opinions, which are both, moderate, centrist, sometimes right, sometimes left. But I have, I have certain feelings and passions about things. But I feel like, the majority of people I'm around are not canceling me, are not trying. But, when I, spoke out about firing nurses who didn't want to get the vaccine, I had doctors down my throat. Doctors. When I was speaking about how we have criminal, illegal immigrants, I'm like, really? There was somebody who was raped by an illegal migrant, and I had posted, what happened on Facebook, and a liberal doctor goes after me saying, why aren't you talking about all the good migrants? I go, my father was a legal immigrant. I'm a first-generation American. I do talk about that. So basically, you have no heart for a child who was assaulted, raped, killed? Really? I can't bring the news. I can't share a news story without you going out. I mean, there's no wiggle. There's no flexibility. You can't have a conversation. And so do I think Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is going to be the head or eventually lead the Democratic Party? Absolutely not. No, I don't. Because even though she knows how to get on the camera and she knows how to get a lot of attention, she does draw a lot of negative criticism. And people she's not likable. Gavin Newsom has a much better chance than she does. The likability factor. So that's how I feel. 1-877 Doc Daliah. Don't go away.
Did you know that healthy arteries make a gas? Yes, actually 3 known gases. Hi, I'm Dr. Mitch, and nitric oxide is a gas that's readily made all day long to keep our arteries open by relaxing the blood vessel walls. By doing this, our circulation is increased, bringing blood, oxygen, and nutrients to every part of your body. Both age and poor diet can lead to a loss of this precious gas, and in turn, blood pressure can go up, energy can go down, and you can get tingling in your hands and feet. Well, our product, Ultimate Nitric Oxide, can easily help fix this lack of nitric oxide. Go to TotalWellness.com. That's TotalWellness.com, where we are helping you to look good, feel good, and enjoy total wellness.